All right, so thank you for showing up today to tell us a little bit about buying a home and how that process works. Maybe first off, you want to tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Sure. It's always good to show up, by the way. I'm Thomas Mayhew with eXp Realty Ohio and TomMayhewRealEstate.com and listed with Tom.com. Hope you're doing great today and just want to take a few moments to answer a few common questions about buying a home. This is probably geared more towards a first-time home buyer, but sometimes I do buyer consultations with folks that maybe it's been quite a while since they bought a home and they just are a little fuzzy on some of the details. So hopefully this will be helpful in both cases.
Awesome, great. Our first question is, in some ways, I guess you could say a simple one. What is the process of buying a home? How does it all work?
Well, typically it starts off with having a conversation with a realtor and perhaps getting into some specifics of your situation. So, because in that way, the realtor is able to kind of custom design some of the front end or some of the details in your purchase, because not everybody's situation is exactly the same. A cash buyer is very different from an FHA buyer or a conventional buyer. So the needs are different, and even sometimes in terms of what house you look at, the process is a little bit different, because it's buying a house is a process of elimination, right? So your financing is going to eliminate certain homes. The process, though, to answer the question, generally talk with a realtor, talk about the process, talk about what's going to be needed, what's going to be expected of you as a buyer and a borrower if you are getting a loan, and then refer you to a lender. And the lender is quite important. We'll talk more about that probably in a little bit. And then the process basically is you look for homes on the MLS and maybe beyond the MLS as well. You find the one you like. Your agent makes an offer on your behalf. You got to sign it, but that's how it works. That's presented to the seller, and the seller responds through their listing agent, the person that's representing them and their interests. And then there might be a little bit of banter back and forth until we get to what we call mutual acceptance. In other words, everybody's agreed to all the terms. Maybe the price changed a few times or a couple times, got negotiated, maybe some terms got negotiated, but everybody's now agreed on everything. At that point, we open escrow. What's escrow? Well, escrow is a third-party company that is basically their obligation is to follow the terms of the agreement. So whatever it says in the agreement, whatever was agreed on, that's what they're to follow through on. So if the seller is paying some of the buyer's closing costs, escrow makes sure that in the paperwork that's what happens. Whatever the sales price is, escrow makes sure that's the sales price, et cetera, et cetera. So escrow is also where when you write the offer, you'll have what's called earnest money. Earnest money, I've done a long video on that. Maybe we'll put a link down below for that. But that one, earnest money, is basically serious money. It's showing the seller that you're serious. So how serious did you want to show the seller that you are about the house? Well, if you don't really care if you get the house, well, maybe $500 is plenty. If you do care a lot about the house, you love that house, it's the perfect house, it's on the exact street you want, well, you might want to sharpen your pencil and put up quite a bit, because yes, in fact, it does let the seller know that you're quite serious about the house. Now, that money, earnest money, what happens to that money? Well, as long as you buy the house, it's credited towards your purchase, whether that's your closing costs or whether that's your down payment, okay? If you wake up 2 or 3 days before closing, just as an example, and you decide, I don't want to buy a house in 2 or 3 days, you're going to lose your earnest money, because you just took that seller off the market with a beautiful house or a nice house, and he lost out on many buyers that could have bought the house, and you just flipped out for some reason. Like, okay, so don't do that, right? Okay, so there's the process of writing an offer, getting it accepted. The earnest money is part of the offer. The terms are in the offer. The sales price is one of those terms. The next thing that happens is you do a home inspection. Every agent will recommend, every good agent will recommend that you do a home inspection. Only in a very rare instance will I be comfortable not. In fact, like there's one investor I work with, he does not need to do an inspection. He just doesn't. He knows stuff so well that he doesn't need to. But by and large, 99.99% of the people I work with need to pay an inspector to go inspect that home, because they're going to look at stuff that you and I won't look at. They've got tools you and I don't have. They're going to see stuff you and I won't see, because I'm not going in a crawl space, okay? I don't dress properly for that. I'm not going in an attic crawl space, okay? And I don't think you are either. So we got to have somebody, pay somebody to go do that and tell us if there's anything wrong. So what happens then is, if there are issues like health and safety issues, or big surprises like a broken truss that nobody could see, then we ask the seller to fix those things. Okay, so there's another negotiation. Okay, I could talk more about that some other time. But after that's done, then typically the appraisal happens. Well, the appraiser is going to contact the listing agent and say, hey, when can I go see the house? They'll set an appointment. That appraiser will go see the house. That appraiser will make some measurements to make sure they get the square footage of the house just right, take note of certain things about the house, details. Depending on the type of financing, they may also have an inspection element to what they do. For example, an FHA appraiser will not tolerate peeling paint. Why? Because it's in the rules. They can't. So they're going to write that up and say, seller has to fix it. And that deal is not going to close until the seller does fix it. That's just the way it is. So that's the kind of thing you have to be aware of when you go look at houses, which kind of financing you are, how likely is the seller to actually agree to, fix peeling paint and other issues that the appraiser might bring up that are just requirements. Okay, so after the appraisal is done, they are looking at comps, like past closings, solds, if you will, and they're going to give a valuation opinion about that property. Okay, so if that valuation comes up at or above, we just proceed to closing. Okay, and the underwriter for the bank or the lender is going to review the whole file. They're going to review you as a buyer and a borrower, okay, and they're going to review the property primarily through the appraisal process. But they're also looking at, do you need flood insurance and various things like that. So they've got a long list that the underwriter has to check off every box. And until those boxes are all checked, it will not be released for a clear to close. Now, when the underwriter is done and everything is good, what happens is the bank will send out a CD. It's a closing disclosure. It's required by law. They have to do it. That goes to you, the borrower, and you review the terms and make sure that there's nothing new or kind of crazy compared to what they originally told you about what it was going to cost to buy the house. So if it all looks good, you acknowledge it, and that starts 3 days down to when you can actually sign your loan package and the closing documents. So escrow will then call you, schedule you to sign. You come in and sign, and typically that day or the next day you get keys to the house. So that's in general the process. There's lots of details in there, but that's probably plenty for just a kind of a little primer, and I hope that helps.
Cool. So I think one thing that a lot of the people watching this video may be wondering first and foremost is really how to get started. And I think that really involves getting a great lender. And maybe one question is, how important is it to select like a really good lender? Are they all the same, or can you just choose whoever you want? Or is there actually a little bit of an art to choosing a lender?
Well, there is, and that's why it's important to talk to a real estate agent first. So the first thing that, for me in real estate, like when I originally moved to Ohio, the first thing I did was start calling all the lenders because I wanted to see who's good. And I'm always on the hunt for who's really good, but also who's got a specialty. Lenders have what they call overlays. And if you think of overlays as goalposts, so for example, an FHA goalpost might be out here, but the lender's goalposts might be right here. Okay, so now that means the requirements just got tighter. Well, so it'd be nice to find a lender whose goalposts line up with the FHA goalposts, right? because then it's not getting harder to get the loan. It's just as easy as just the FHA guidelines make it. Okay, so knowing your situation, knowing what kind of financing is going to be most likely used by you to buy your house is important. And then, yes, some information can be shared that might lead you to the best lender. So all the lenders are not the same. All underwriters are not the same. Sometimes underwriters will, or the process will make you crazy. So if you get a bad one or somebody with a bad underwriting process, you'll be surprised at how upset it'll make you. It can be truly unbelievable. So do I want that for my clients? No, not a chance. I want it to be a smooth process. Now, that also depends on you too, because if the lender says, hey, I need a document, well, get it to them lickety-split, because then you're not the bottleneck. So what you don't understand sometimes is that, you might get that document in, but they may still have a process and it's still going to take a while. So just because it's in doesn't mean magically, oh, we're done, here's the approval, or we're done, you can close now. There's still a process involved. So it helps if the buyer is very responsive too. So just a note to the wise there. But does that answer the question okay?
Yeah, I think so. And also, since we're on that topic, and since you mentioned you've called a bunch of lenders, would you be able to recommend a lender?
Yes. So being a licensed real estate agent in the state of Ohio and also in Washington State, Ohio definitely, and it's reasonable to require that an agent provide at least 3. Okay. Now, the fact is, I've had people call 2 of the 3, and then call me and say, Tom, I'm confused now. What's the matter? I gave you 3 good lenders. Well, yeah, I like them both. the 2 I called. Oh, I get it. It's understandable. I mean, you start a relationship with somebody, and yeah, I mean, you have sort of a sense of commitment to them. We're not all flakes, right? And we don't want to come off as flaky either. So I try to give you enough information about the lenders to help you figure out, okay, probably this one would be best. So if you end up only calling one, because of the 3 that I've provided, I'm not worried that you're going to get a bad rate, a bad loan, a bad lender, a bad situation. Like, I'm not worried about that. That's all going to be good. Now, they might have, one of them over another might have a little bit of an advantage because maybe their underwriting is smoother, or maybe they're more thorough up front, or or maybe one's really good at VA loans, one's really good at FHA, one's really good at conventional. I know one lender that can get his conventional loans done in pretty much 3 weeks, pretty standard. That's great. I mean, why should it take 4 weeks if it can take 3? Inspection only takes really 7 days is enough. Why should we always put 10 days, especially in a competitive market? Shouldn't we make it a shorter time period and just get it over with? I mean, we know we got to do the inspection. Why not just get it done, right? That's the first thing that's got to get done once you put it under a contract. So for me, why take a bunch of extra time if you don't need to? Now, on FHA deals and VA deals, you're going to be taking some extra time. But again, same principle. Why wait to the 9th day to do the inspection? Why not day 1 or day 2? Get that over with. Get that appraisal ordered. Get things moving, right? So that's the way I see it. And hopefully that's helpful as far as, the lender selection process.
Yeah, that's good. I have one final question, and it has to do with, how you can Google those mortgage rate calculators where you can enter in the amount you want to pay per month, and it tells you, okay, this is how much you can buy. This is the purchase price at which you could buy. Are those accurate? Can you trust those? Or
well, it depends how much detail they're asking, because are they actually figuring out your debt to income ratio? Because I mean, if you think about it from a lender's perspective, if you've got a high debt to income ratio, they're not going to give you the choice rate, or the prime rate. They're going to, there's prime, there's subprime. So like if your credit score is low, for example, and do you know for sure what your credit score is right at the moment? Probably not. You might know relatively close, but not exactly. So So I would say I would take them with a little bit of a grain of salt, because I don't think they have enough information inherent inside to be able to determine for sure what your rate would be. It's an estimate. Now, I do know of a website that's run by Experian, and that one will estimate all three of your credit scores for $1, and it's a soft hit. So if you go to the lender and you've already done that, especially if the lender knows that particular website and knows that's run by Experian, that can be pretty useful.
All right, great. I think that's going to round out our questions for today. Actually, one final one. What would be the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Sure. So texting is the quickest, just because I'm often on the go or making calls. I'm not idle very often. So 440-420-1342, 440-420-1342. Call or text me. Texting is best, and then I'll call you just as soon as I can break free, and we can schedule buyer consultations for first-time home buyers, or for somebody that's returning to the market after it's been some time, just like maybe a little refresher, or you have specific questions. I can take just a couple of minutes, but always happy to talk with my friends that are looking for real estate. For me, all my clients do become friends. And that's just the way it goes. That's the way I roll. And I genuinely like people, and I genuinely enjoy serving people. So if I can help you, serve you and your family, I'm all for it. So look forward to hearing from you.